Welcome to Sizzle Fantasy Sports, the channel with the most sizzling hot fantasy takes and analysis, presented by your host, Gavin.
Rodgers clean pocket, throws the middle to Yates, Davante, touchdown, and a dagger!
Hey, how's it going, fantasy players? I'm Gavin with SFS and SizzleFantasy.com, here to give you some insight and updated takes on my June rankings for the 2021 fantasy football season. I've been blabbing and talking ad nauseum about the running backs for the past week and a half now, and I've gotten that out of the way. I've really addressed the things that I want to, and there's still stuff I can talk about, but we got the whole rest of the summer to do so. It's time to start focusing in on the wide receiver position, and that's what we've got up on the block today with my top 12 players at the position here, updated because this past week we had some big stuff go down and some important things that will be taken into consideration here when I put this list out for you. So sit back and enjoy today's video. We do have some big news before I get into things though. I have finally completed and put out my top 60 rookie dynasty profiles and rankings for those 2021 class here. That's some big stuff. It's got all the positions. My big board has those guys on there, all rated. We've got stuff called the SFS Risk Radar, where we break down how much of a serious chance you're taking on a player when you invest into them on draft day. We do talent ratings, and we also rate situations and break down how that impacts each fantasy player's value. So if you're either a dynasty player already, you need some help for these rookie drafts here in the summer, or if you're looking to have a startup league here in 2021 over the summer before we hit the 2021 season, make sure to head over to SizzleFantasy.com and get yourself hooked up with one of those draft guide collections. We've got a lot to choose from. I'll be starting that redraft packet here in the coming days and getting those rankings cranked out. So I've still got a little bit of stuff to put into the Dynasty draft guide there and to get that fully completed and ready for you guys this season. But most of it's done now. We've got a ton of content and information, articles and videos and whatnot. So head over there, SizzleFantasy.com, check that out. But top 12 wide receivers, let's get right into them. At the top of the board here to kick things off, no changes to my top spot at the wide receiver position. Davante Adams is still my wide receiver one for 2021 fantasy football as it stands right now in June. We do have a bit of an awkward situation though. No Aaron Rodgers at mandatory camp for the Green Bay Packers, which started yesterday when you're watching this video. So that's not good. We don't like to see that for Davante, but I'm still cool riding with him here as that top dog. There's not really many other guys in that Packers offense that command very much of a target volume, and regardless of who the quarterback is, I think he's going to be just fine. If we look back to his fourth season in the league when he was still a baby on that rookie contract, he played with Brett Hundley, one of, if not the worst starters in the National Football League that season. He still managed 117 targets, 10 touchdowns, and nearly 1,000 yards, right around that 900-yard marker. So Adams has shown us years prior to the player he is now, he's still capable of putting up really, really nice fantasy production. And even if Aaron Rodgers comes back this season, all the better. We can expect more towards what he had last year. The touchdown count is going to come down from where it was at 18 touchdowns last season. But this has been a double-digit touchdown scorer since basically 2016. He has 58 receiving touchdowns since then, so we're looking at an absolute monster, and that's over the last 4 seasons, mind you. So really, really great production in the red zone because of how well he runs routes and finds separation down there. And then the fact that he also has leaping and jump ball ability to go up and win those contested grabs and score those extra touchdowns that sets him above the rest of the pack. That's what's given Davante these top-end production seasons. If it's Jordan Love, if it's Blake Bortles, whatever. We've seen Blake Bortles give Allen Robinson a 14, nearly 1,500-yard receiving season as a Jacksonville Jaguar. So there's no concern for me with Davante Adams. Regardless of who's out there, he's going to get his numbers. We like to see Aaron Rodgers. That's the obvious case here. We want him out there on the field because we want the best quarterback play for our top receiver in fantasy football. But that might not be the case right now. And if I'm being completely honest, it's not looking like it. And unless something gets resolved in a major fashion here, it's looking like Green Bay is going to have things shaken up. But Davante Adams is our constant. He's that wide receiver one. He commands a heck of a lot of targets in that offense. And he is far and away the best player offensively on that football team, minus Aaron Rodgers if he's not there. So number 2 here, Tyreek Hill moving into this. Look, you give me Tyreek Hill and that speed plus Patrick Mahomes' arm, you're looking for fireworks in fantasy football. He only had, 87 receptions in 2020. that is a very small count for a guy that is as dynamic and as explosive as Tyreek is. And he even left like a 60-plus yard touchdown off the board and off of his fantasy stats last season that he actually scored on. I don't know if you've seen this play before, but Mahomes threw Tyreek a bomb, and it kind of juggled around and bounced off a defender and ended up in his arms, and it was a clean touchdown. We could see it on the replay, but nobody challenged it, and it just walked off as if it never happened. So we left points hanging on the board last year if we were Tyreek Hill fantasy owners. He had a monster season. He had some really, really big games. Finished as wide receiver 2 here. So no changes to the top of my board. Only a 65% catch percentage as well. So if that increases, you're looking at a player. It probably won't go up too much higher because some of the best players in the league are hanging right around that 70% marker. But you're looking at a guy with Mahomes. It's a dream scenario. These two are the perfect complement to one another's game, and Tyreek is, as I said, one of the most explosive and speediest receivers there is in the National Football League. So we're looking at a guy, he's got a major upside every season. He's a threat to take it the distance every time he catches the ball. So not many guys you can say that about here. Tyreek Hill, number 2 receiver for the 2021 season, Calvin Ridley up next here. This is the big change for me. My wide receiver 3, he is vaulted up from around the 6, 7, 8 marker all the way into this number 3 spot because of the departure of Julio Jones in Atlanta. This is big news, and Calvin Ridley was such a monster last season when Julio was off the field, and Julio was still there for at least half the season last year, and he was around to take up targets and eat into Calvin Ridley's volume, but he still had 90 receptions, nearly 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So when he is the alpha from day one, there is no Julio. You add in a Kyle Pitts, but that's still a young rookie that isn't necessarily going to walk in and assert himself day one as the top dog. That's Calvin Ridley right now. We've seen him do it. We know he can do it. This is different from projecting a prospect here and thinking that, he's going to see an increase in work and whatnot. We already saw him do it for half a season last year when Julio Jones was on the shelf with injury. He's been the man. So Calvin Ridley has shown us. You see there, he finished as wide receiver 4 last season. He can do this. This is a very, very top-end talent player who's got all the tools in the bag he needs, and he's going to walk out there next season. He's going to ball. The Falcons still have to pass the ball a lot because they have a very, very struggling and bad defense. That didn't change from last season. So it might have gotten a little better, but you're still not going to expect a top unit in the league that's going to be leading at the end of games. They're going to be trailing a lot, trying to stay in it and catching up. So wide receiver 4 here, I've got Stefon Diggs moving down 1 spot from his 2020 finish. And the main reason for that is basically everything went perfect for Diggs in 2020, and he didn't see too much adversity. He had 16 games played, so we didn't miss him for any games, whereas even a Calvin Ridley last season, who had a pretty darn good showing, Julio wasn't out there the whole time, which obviously helps a productive player when he has the ability to produce that highly. He only missed 1 game. But Stefon Diggs here, no games missed, 127 receptions, 1,535 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So I'm expecting more adversity, more things to go not Stefon Diggs' way this year. I have talked about him and Josh Allen. They're the dream quarterback-receiver matchup for those two skill sets, kind of like when you look at the Tyreek Hill Mahomes scenario where they just perfectly fit into each other's game. That's what Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen is here. But again, things can't go perfectly, and they rarely do 2 seasons in a row. Maybe he even sees more touchdowns than he did last year with only 8. He didn't even crack double digits, but he hasn't really done that throughout his career, so it's not something that we should bank on as an avenue of productivity for him to all of a sudden discover here in, year 6 now of his career. So Stefon Diggs is going to be an elite receiver. He's going to be a receiver 1. He's going to have monster games like he did a season ago. But things aren't going to go as smoothly this year. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders, so that's more competition for targets. They did lose John Brown, but I still think that it's a step up adding in Sanders, even though he is at the end of his career. Cole Beasley's still there. He's coming back. He was very productive and an underrated fantasy asset last season. So there's just some things to take into consideration here that I think, if we are honest and look at last season as a grand success for Stefon Diggs, you have to expect some minor setbacks. So that's what I'm doing here. Diggs moves down only 1 spot for me. Up next, DK Metcalf. This is one of the ones that, I haven't been overly bullish on DK Metcalf in the past, but I think it's time that he steps up here. And you see there, he finished as wide receiver 6. I don't think it's too bold to have him this high up on the sheet. And when I talk about a player who only had 83 receptions, you look at a guy like a Tyreek Hill even, and he had 87. these are big play receivers. These are guys that don't need the volume to get the high-end fantasy production, but they certainly can do it. And when you look at DK Metcalf, think about what he could do if he cracks triple digits and gets into that 100 reception marker, and what he can do beyond that. He's one of the best players. He actually averages over half a yard more per target than Tyreek Hill at 10.1, which is a pretty darn ridiculous marker to be at for a player of this level and this elite potential. This is the closest thing, him and A.J. Brown, that we've seen to a Julio Jones, to a Calvin Johnson. I think DK Metcalf tends to draw more of the Calvin Johnson comparisons, and I think A.J. Brown's probably more of the Julio Jones prototype. We don't see guys with this route running, and DK Metcalf can still refine those routes a bit more, become more polished as a player, but we don't see guys run this big, that are this big, run this fast, and blow through defenders as well as they do. So he's a one type of breed guy. There's not anyone else in the league like him right now other than potentially an A.J. Brown, but even the two differ slightly in their play styles, although they are very similarly put together from a physical standpoint. But Metcalf, again, he didn't see too many receptions last year. He's the receiver one in this offense. He commands those targets, especially down near the red zone. He had so many productive fantasy games last season off of like 3 or 4 catches in a game, and that's all it took for him to be a receiver one that week. So I'm expecting him here in year 3. This is kind of the step up and take charge of this offense year. Go in there, get that triple-digit reception marker, and become one of the top dogs in fantasy, as he's already been, skimming on the borderline of doing that the past 2 years as a rookie and a second-year player. So I expect big things from Metcalf here in 2021 and moving forward. And then up next, old reliable DeAndre Hopkins. He's starting to get into his 30s now. He's starting to age a little bit, but I don't have any concerns about that. He's still in his prime for now, and D-Hop has just been one of the most reliable fantasy players that we've seen over the last 5-6 years at the position. He has been very, very good regardless of quarterback play. I mean, before Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray, he was still putting up top-end fantasy points. And then the fact that Kyler Murray just keeps getting better every year, and Cliff Kingsbury has said that Murray has mastered this offense and perfected the skills that it takes to be the franchise quarterback in this offensive scheme. If Murray keeps showing improvement into what is this, year 3 now for him, and he just keeps getting better, that's only going to make DeAndre Hopkins better. And D-Hop's a guy who, he had a lot of yards last season, but the touchdown count really wasn't there. He only had 6 TD receptions, but as I said, one of the most reliable players in the National Football League as a wide receiver. He's way up at the top of the 72% catch percentage. If you remember back earlier in the video, Tyreek Hill's only at about 65%. So he's catching over 7% more of balls thrown his way than Tyreek Hill is, who is my wide receiver too. So that just shows you how dependable D-Hop is. He's going to get absolutely hammered with targets every single game because this is an air raid scheme. They have a high volume passing offense, and they're trying to throw the ball all around the lot. And then even if you compare a DeAndre Hopkins and a DK Metcalf, they've both got to play Jalen Ramsey twice a year, and that's one of the toughest matchups in the league for a wide receiver. D-Hop seems to be the best player to match up against Jalen Ramsey in the NFL right now. He seems like the guy who is most consistently able to put up respectable fantasy numbers against him. He's not going to go out there and have his best game of the season against Ramsey, but I feel like he's the guy that I would be most comfortable playing in a start in my lineup against Ramsey of anyone in the National Football League. So D-Hop is as good as it gets. He's as consistent and as dependable as it gets. Maybe he's not so much of a massive league winner anymore as he once was because the top end ceiling isn't quite as high as was once there, but D-Hop is still an elite fantasy football option. This is a guy that, as I said, crazy high floor, gets so many targets per game, catches such a high percentage of the passes thrown to him that you just can't find more reliable options at the spot you can get him on draft day. So that's why I love D-Hop. A.J. Brown up next here. He actually I had him as my wide receiver 3 right before the Julio Jones trade. Now he's got more target competition in Tennessee. This is still a low passing volume offense, but this is right around where A.J. Brown's finishing in previous seasons. And for a guy that missed 2 games last year, I think it's safe to expect him to finish around this wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8 territory. He's going to be a big play guy. He's still going to see the same roughly amount of targets that he's seen in the past, and he was actually targeted less than Corey Davis was last season for the Titans. So you're looking at a player who's been used to having another guy next to him see more opportunity than he has. And I'm not so sure that's even going to be the case here with Julio Jones. I think there's a good chance that Julio comes in and puts up really efficient numbers, but Julio's been a guy that's been getting banged up over the past couple seasons more and more, and I think that in the twilight of his prime, as I've talked about a couple times on the channel here, I think it's safe to assume that A.J. Brown might be the alpha in this offense still. So, again, a player like DK Metcalf not seeing crazy volume. He barely saw 100 targets last season, and that's not receptions. That's just targets. How many times he was actually throwing the ball. I can only imagine what would happen if he sees an increase in that stat. I think that's something that we're going to have to wait till Julio's gone to see him really see 110, 15, 20 target season. But for now, he's been making do with what he's had. So I think it's a pretty darn good situation. Again, just like DK Metcalf, 10.1 yards per target, which is a really, really insane marker to be at for a player this young, for a player this gifted. He's going to only improve from here and just keep getting more and more efficient until we see otherwise in a decline in his game. But A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, these are crazy young receivers that are on the up right now, and you want them on your fantasy lineups, especially, I haven't even pointed out yet, the Titans' defense is getting worse and worse every season. They tried to address it this offseason in the draft and free agency, but it's a patched together unit. They're going to have to throw the ball more this year. And I talked about this briefly, but I think that he's going to become more efficient, not only because he has Julio Jones opposite of him, so they're going to be, focusing less and less on him as the key to this offense, but the play action game is going to be really on fire next year. Derrick Henry, and then you've got those two receivers on the outside lined up, ready for deep balls from Ryan Tannehill. This offense is going to have fireworks next year, and it's going to do some pretty good things. I'm really skeptical, about this defense and how many games this team will actually win. But from a fantasy perspective, you want to invest in the Titans right now because they've got a lot of things going for them. And then up here at my number 8 spot, Keenan Allen. This is the target monster. This is the volume specialist right here. Keenan Allen is not a flashy pick. This is not a guy that's going to go out there and win your fantasy leagues. But Keenan Allen is a rock in your fantasy lineups. He will keep you afloat in those down weeks and give you dependable and consistent production. There's been guys on this list like a Davante Adams who last season I believe saw 149 targets. Keenan Allen was right there with him, and he missed a couple of games last year. So Keenan Allen, 147 targets in only 14 games last year, and he didn't even have 1,000 yards receiving. He's literally averaging over 10 targets a game, which is absurd and unheard of. I mean, between him and Justin Herbert, they're going to be such a dynamic connection next year. I only expect Herbert to get better as a second-year quarterback that I think Keenan Allen, if he stays healthy, will go north of 1,000 yards. The touchdown numbers aren't insane for him because he's not really a red zone type player, but he still finds a way to get between 6 and 8 touchdowns. Maybe he even sees a spike here and gets 10, which would be a really nice number for him. This is a guy that's just ultra competitive, ultra dependable, and you look at him from a PPR lens, and I'm drooling all over Keenan Allen because of how much volume he sees. So I love Keenan Allen. I think that he's super, super slept on last season. I've talked about this a couple times here in the offseason, but I had Keenan Allen rated in my top 3 receivers for a given fantasy week last year when I do my week-by-week ratings heading into like week 9, for example. I don't remember what that game was, but if I did my week 9 wide receiver rankings and then pushed those out to you in a video and talked about, I see this player being better than this player for this reason, this matchup, whatever. Allen was in the top 3 like almost every time because I loved his matchup. I loved the opportunity he was seeing. The targets and the volume was exceptional last year. That's going to push forward into this season. They lost Hunter Henry. They've got some targets to fill there. There's going to be other guys that step up and take a lot of those, but this is going to be a player, if he plays 16 games, north of 150 targets. I'm almost certain of it. So if you're looking for a safe pick here, he's roughly going in the 3rd round right now. Great value to get your hands on a Keenan Allen as a player that'll keep that lineup chugging ahead at full steam each and every single week. And then Justin Jefferson here. Year 2, I think that Jefferson is going to be an absolute stud. Only 88 receptions last year. That's all it took for him to go to 1,400 yards on the dot. That is insane for what you're talking about there. 11.2 yards per route run. That's a whole yard more than A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, who already jump off the paper as guys that are ahead of the game there. There might not be a better young route runner in the National Football League than Justin Jefferson, and a player that not only is good at running routes, but is explosive, and when he gets into space is gone. Like, he is just as good athletically, and he doesn't really look like a physically imposing threat offensively, but he is. And he does literally everything well on the football field. One of the best route runners, really, really good in space. And he's got a really good running mate in Adam Thielen as well. And something I think that's underrated about that is it keeps the coverage light on Jefferson. And I think that teams were starting to respect him more as the season grew on and got longer, that they truly believed Jefferson was the one in this option or in this offense. But nonetheless, he still put up his numbers. He still did just fine. Adam Thielen had a higher touchdown count than Jefferson did last season, but was nowhere close in the yardage category. So I expect even more growth from him this year. And then he only started 14 of the 16 games he played in last season. So 14 games started, he's averaging 140 yards per game. I know this wasn't the exact case scenario, but if you remove those 2 games when he wasn't in the starting lineup and give all the production to those 14 games, that's 140 yards receiving on a per game basis. So monster stats here, 70.4% catch percentage. That's right up there with D-Hop, one of the best in the league. So Jefferson is a player I'm absolutely comfortable with dipping into in the top of the second round. He's been faded on other fantasy analyst boards, but I think that it's just a really safe situation to put your team in here. And when you look at an offense that's also really balanced like the Vikings, that's something I like to see as well, as a dependable and a consistent option for lineups, and he's got some good matchups on that schedule as well. And then Allen Robinson here. I cannot wait to see Allen Robinson get finally unleashed in this offense. Whether it's Andy Dalton or whether it is Justin Fields, he is going to be great for either one of these quarterbacks. Andy Dalton was good enough when he was with the Bengals to get it done for A.J. Green, and A.J. Green was still able to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football and one of the best there was at the time when he was in the prime of his career. And then Allen Robinson, the dude just does work. He's played for Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, Blake Bortles throughout his career. He's put up numbers with every single one of them. It literally has not mattered who's been out there. He tore his ACL once, but he got over that. He's fine. 2 of the last 3 seasons under Mitchell Trubisky, 1,000-yard years. So A-Rob is as safe of a pick as it gets here. And like I said, he's going to get it done with Andy Dalton. I just know that if that's the scenario, he will have what it takes. But what I'm most excited for is the upside that we can finally see unlocked if Justin Fields is able to, A, work out and be what we think he is, and B, start throwing balls downfield to Allen Robinson. Start giving him the opportunity to stretch the field, do what he wants to do, because he's an absolute artist at winning the contested ball and mossing defenders. He's such a good route runner. He'll get it done in the red zone. I think he'll see an increase in almost every one of his statistical categories. And if Fields is able to be as good as we think he can be, there's a chance that Allen Robinson finishes way higher than wide receiver 10 next year, because the last 2 seasons, he has seen over 150 targets, which is, again, that's like that Keenan Allen unheard of territory. So this is a player that is, the sky's the limit for Robinson this season. He's going to give a lot of really good value back to fantasy owners. He's been a guy that we've talked about like that for the last couple of years now. So Robinson can finally hit that ceiling here this year. He's always been a safe floor option. He's always been uber dependable whenever we need him. But this season, I think he finally gets his chance to shine with that high-end upside at the quarterback spot that we've all been waiting for seasons now. And then Michael Thomas here. I'll be completely honest, I don't like Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is not a player I'm a fan of, and honestly, he doesn't really excite me that much when I talk about 2021 fantasy football, but I had to put him on the list. He's just a player who is very consistent, and when he's actually healthy, last year we got to give him some grace and not factor that too much into our 2021 rankings and whatnot. But he was good enough last year. There was decline in his game, obviously. When you have a record-setting season, I mean, the guy had 185 targets, 149 catches, so like literally as many catches as Davante Adams had targets last season. And then, you know, the touchdowns were okay, but 1,725 yards, that you're going to come down the next season. You're not going to get back there. That's just absurd territory to be in. But no more Drew Brees, so we're going to expect probably an even larger peel back than we would have seen even if it was just Drew Brees back without the record-setting year. So I'm still expecting probably 100, 120 targets for Michael Thomas this coming year, maybe even more than that. We'll see how much they really throw the ball with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and how productive MT can still be. But this is a guy, I mean, we give him a lot of crap for being a hitch and a slant and a curl receiver, and that's really all he does. But he gives you 10 yards a catch, and that's fine by me. I mean, I'll take it. Not a flashy pick anymore. Michael Thomas is pretty much just a PPR machine. He's going to get a lot of volume. I see him kind of in the same light as I see a Keenan Allen, but I don't know. Keenan Allen's a lot more humble and respectful, so he's a lot more of an easy player to root for here. I don't think MT's all that special of a pick this coming season. He's got some risk associated with him because, A, I believe in a Justin Herbert to get Keenan Allen the ball a heck of a lot more than I believe in famous Jameis, or a glorified tight end, running back, receiver, quarterback, do-it-all, gadget, versatile piece. Taysom Hill's not a franchise quarterback, so that's not going to work out too amazing, I don't think, if that's the situation. But nonetheless, here, Michael Thomas, my wide receiver 11. He'll be fine next year. He'll be a wide receiver 1 if he's healthy. He'll get his looks. He'll get his targets. He'll put up his numbers. Just not somebody that I'm overly thrilled or enthused about drafting for the 2021 season. And then last up here, scary Terry McLaurin. This is another player who's probably going to be a guy next year that you're either smashing tables because his production is going to be so frustrating, or you're going to be singing his high praises because he just scored so many fantasy points. He won you your fantasy week by himself. And that, of course, is a direct result of the fact that Fitzmagic is his quarterback next year, and we all love Fitzmagic. He's one of the most exciting players in the NFL. Forget fantasy for a second here. Fitzmagic's freaking awesome. We love watching him play, doing all the crazy stuff he does, but Fitzmagic, it's like all gas or all brake. You're getting everything. You're getting the world of production. You're getting sky-high ceilings that you never knew were possible, or you're getting a complete goose egg, a dud, and a fantasy disaster. And that's what I fear for Terry McLaurin this year, but I think that those high highs will be so high that he's going to just wipe people off the face of the earth in those weeks. And then the lows will be a bit lower than we've seen them for Terry in the past, because I think that when Fitzmagic does have his struggles, that's going to, trickle down and affect his play. But nonetheless, Terry's been really, really solid, really consistent the first 2 years of his NFL career. He's heading into year 3 right now, and he's had to play with some pretty dang bad quarterbacks, just like an Allen Robinson. He's played with some miserable QBs throughout the first 2 seasons of his career here. Dwayne Haskins, his former college teammate at Ohio State. That's nice. That's all good and fine. But he didn't work out. Former first-round pick. The team cut him. He didn't even make it to year 3 after being their first-round pick. So that's a red flag there. Taylor Heineke, he was taking college classes, and they called him in to play starting quarterback for the Washington football team in the playoffs. So, again, probably a red flag. He played nice. It was an inspiring game. It was fun to watch. Not a guy you want leading your franchise. Alex Smith, love the guy. He's awesome. Great comeback story, but his upside was really limited by that play, and Terry was kind of injured at that point in the season anyway, so wish Alex the best of luck in retirement there, and that's awesome. But the point being, Terry McLaurin has not had one single elite NFL quarterback in his 3-year career yet, and he still managed to put up good numbers. His yardage went up in the 2020 season, but his touchdown count actually went down from his rookie year. So if we could find some sort of a happy medium to balance with in between, I think that's the best situation here and what we can hope for Terry this year. So a wide receiver 1 in my book. Like I said, really high highs expect from McLaurin, but those lows, they might be kind of ugly. They might lose you some fantasy weeks if the rest of your lineup doesn't pick up the slack. So be mindful of that when you pick up Terry McLaurin this year in fantasy. But at the end of the day, I think he will be a pretty darn high finisher if he's able to stay healthy and play those full 16. All right, there's an updated look at my wide receiver rankings for 2021 fantasy football, or at least the top 12 of them as they stand here in early June of this offseason. I'll be making at least one of these rankings videos every month as we lead up to draft day and ultimately pick our teams up for the season. So a lot of good stuff going around here on the channel. Make sure if you haven't done so already, head down, click that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you're notified whenever I come out with a new video or hit up a live stream. Remember, I'm getting you guys involved with some of my live subscriber mock drafts. So if you stick around for that, turn that bell on. You'll be the first one in there. You'll get that link right away, and you can join me up and draft some teams with me. So that'd be awesome. I'd love to see you there. Stick around with the channel, you guys. I can't wait to have you be a part of the SFS community, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.